Hey everyone, and welcome back to Abyssin. Exploring the unknown has always had this irresistible pull on people. Beneath the water's surface, caves hide secrets that seem untouched for centuries, but they also hold traps that can turn any dive into a nightmare. Today, we're diving into two unforgettable stories. The first one takes us to Florida, where two friends went into an underwater cave without realizing how one small mistake could change everything in just seconds. The second story happened in California, where an experienced diver, someone used to saving lives, went into an abandoned well thinking it would just be another adventure. But a tiny, almost unnoticeable detail sealed his fate. Paradise Springs in Florida was known as a kind of hidden retreat, almost like a secret treasure for divers chasing adventure in crystal clear waters. On September 22nd, 1996, two friends showed up, excited at the thought of exploring the depths. The records where I found this story didn't mention their real names, which I assume was to protect their privacy. I always leave the sources in the description, but for the sake of the story, we'll call them Jake Miller and Lisa Carter. Both of them were certified in open water diving, but neither had any formal cave diving training. Still, the thrill of the unknown felt stronger than the warning signs. As they geared up, they did a quick review of the basics. The plan seemed simple enough, but there was one crucial thing missing. Neither of them brought a guideline, that thin cord cave divers use to make sure they can always find their way out. To Jake and Lisa, that felt unnecessary. After all, they'd been diving together plenty of times and trusted their own experience. The descent started off breathtaking. Around 60 feet down, the cave's entrance came into view. They switched on their flashlights, beams of light cutting through the darkness. Jake swam in front, steady and cautious, while Lisa followed close behind, her heart racing between excitement and unease. The deeper they went, the narrower the passage got. They ended up almost 150 feet deep, further than either of them had planned. The silence was only broken by the steady rhythm of air moving through their regulators. Their lights revealed rock formations that looked like they hadn't been touched for thousands of years. Then everything flipped. Jake, while shifting his position, accidentally stirred up a thick layer of sediment from the cave floor. Within seconds, it spread like smoke, swallowing all visibility. Lisa was hit with a wave of panic. She reached out for Jake's arm, but only found empty water. That cave, which just moments before seemed so mesmerizing, now felt like a trap. She forced herself to calm down, steadying her breathing, knowing that panic was deadly in a place like this. But Jake wasn't as lucky. Blinded and confused, he thrashed in the dark, trying to find the way out. Spinning from side to side only made things worse. His rapid breathing was draining his tank fast. In desperation, he forced himself into a narrow crack in the rock. But his tank and vest got wedged tight, locking him in place. The fear was overwhelming as he realized he was stuck in complete darkness with no sense of where he actually was. Meanwhile, Lisa was still searching through the cloudy water, sweeping her arms for any sign of him. She suddenly felt a shift in the current and thought maybe the cave ceiling had collapsed. Frozen with fear for a second, she realized her air was running low. With no sign of Jake, she made a snap decision to ascend. Every move felt like forever, as if the cave could cave in on her at any moment. When she finally surfaced, she ripped off her mask and gasped for air. She called emergency services right away, knowing every minute mattered. Back inside the cave, Jake was still fighting. Wedged in the crack, his body was exhausted. With trembling hands, he struggled to unclip his gear. After several frantic tries, he managed to slip out of his vest and tank, finally freeing himself. His body drifted backward, but now he was without air, lost inside a cloud of silt. Instinct pushed him to swim upward, but without a guideline, without light, there was no clear path. The little bit of air left was gone. He shoved off the rock walls, trying to reach the surface, but couldn't find his regulator again. His body demanded a breath that simply wasn't there. Rescue divers arrived about an hour later. They moved with precision through the cloudy cave. Contrary to Lisa's fear, the cave hadn't collapsed. They found Jake's body still close to the crack he had gotten stuck in, free of his equipment but motionless. Investigators later concluded that Jake did manage to free himself, but disoriented, he made the fatal choice of trying to swim up without a tank, without air, and without a guideline. On the way, he likely held his breath. and the expanding gas in his lungs caused an embolism that knocked him unconscious before he ever reached the surface. His body was discovered around 45 feet deep, floating in the dark. At first, the news reported that a cave-in had caused the accident, but experts knew that wasn't true. And this wasn't the first, nor the last, tragedy involving divers who went into caves without the right training. Lisa survived, but she carried the weight of that day forever. Later, she admitted that they had underestimated the risks. No guideline, no real cave training. In hindsight, it all seems so obvious. What had begun as a dive into paradise ended up becoming Jake's grave. Jake and Lisa didn't have the training they needed for that kind of dive. But as we're about to see in our next story, even when you do have diving experience, things can still go terribly wrong. On September 17th, 2000, in Goss Canyon, California, Paul Hayden and his brother decided to check out an old abandoned well that led into an underwater cave. Paul wasn't just some curious guy, he was open water certified and part of an elite US Air Force rescue team. But despite all that, he had no formal cave diving training. They started their adventure late in the morning. The entrance was a narrow, pitch-black shaft, the kind of place that would make most people turn around right away. But Paul was determined. He even brought along a camera, probably to capture every moment and share it later. For him, this wasn't just another dive, it was also a story worth telling. They crawled through about 50 feet of tunnel, then descended another 30 feet down a slope before reaching a silent, water-filled chamber. Paul tied a sturdy rope at the edge of the flooded well. That rope would act as both a safety line and his way back out. Before diving in, he went over the plan with his brother. His tank carried roughly 2 hours of air. If he wasn't back by then, his brother was supposed to get help. The plan seemed solid. Paul was used to diving in tough conditions, but there was a problem. This wasn't open water. This was a cave, a place that demanded a different kind of skill and preparation. He wasn't cave certified, and he didn't have the right lights or a proper guideline. Still, he trusted his experience, suited up, and slipped into the water. Almost immediately, he realized what he was up against. Narrow passages, sharp rock walls, and maze-like tunnels made every move a challenge. He pressed on carefully, eager to see what lay deeper inside. Meanwhile, up top, his brother held onto the rope. Every so often, he gave it a few tugs to check in with Paul. At first, he felt the reassuring pulls back, but after about 40 minutes, the line went quiet. He tried again, nothing. Time dragged on, his nerves tightening. When the 2-hour mark came and Paul still hadn't resurfaced, panic set in. His brother rushed out to get help. Rescue teams arrived quickly and descended into the well. They knew every second mattered. The search began in the obvious spots, but the cave was slow and dangerous to move through, the tunnels twisting and suffocatingly tight. Eventually, they found Paul. He was in a narrow passage barely 3 feet wide, right beneath a small air pocket. His body was lying motionless on the rocky floor. The first assumption was the most common in underwater accidents. He must have run out of air. But when they checked his tank, it still held about 2,500 psi left, plenty to make it back. The discovery puzzled everyone. If he had air, why wasn't he breathing? The rescuers noticed other odd details too. His fists were clenched and his regulator wasn't in his mouth. It didn't look like a typical drowning. Something else had happened. On the surface, his brother waited anxiously. When they brought Paul's body out, he ran toward the team, desperate for answers. But at that moment, they didn't have any. Only the painful reality that he was gone. Later, when his brother regained some composure, he demanded details. That's when the rescuers explained. Paul had been found beneath an air pocket, but it wasn't the pocket that killed him. The truth came later, when they reviewed the footage from Paul's camera. The video showed him moving confidently through the tunnels until he noticed something glimmering above the water. It looked like an air bubble trapped in the ceiling of the cave. Curious, he swam up to it. The recording captured the exact moment he made the fatal mistake. He reached the pocket, pulled the regulator from his mouth, something no diver should ever do in a cave, and took a deep breath. Seconds later, his face slackened, his body went limp, and he sank straight to the rocky floor. It wasn't an air pocket at all. It was a pocket of toxic gas, trapped under the cave ceiling with almost no oxygen. One breath was enough to knock him out instantly, leaving no chance to recover. The mystery now fit together. The clenched fists, the regulator out of his mouth, the untouched air still in his tank. It all pointed to a sudden and fatal collapse. That single breath, driven by curiosity, was all it took to end his life. If you've stayed with us this far, I hope you found this story as gripping as I did. And if you did, you'll probably enjoy another one that's popping up on your screen right now. Thanks so much for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next video.